when I was a teenager, I thought that the way that I was going to end up being a musician was by being an Instagram influencer. And that was my thing. I was like, oh, well, I'm just going to be like an internet girl and I'm going to go viral and people are just going to love me and they're going to love my music and I'm just going to post online and do whatever. And needless to say, it didn't work. It didn't work out, hence why I'm here. But this is exactly my point. When I stopped trying to chase this idea of what I thought it was supposed to look like, what I thought that my dream was meant to be, I opened myself up to endless possibilities. And not having those kinds of limitations on myself really pushed me towards a much more authentic path for me, which ended up being, so much more. I mean, at the time, it felt like it was, a very humbling experience. It felt like I was sort of giving up in a way, right? Like I had given up, but then I was like, no, well, I don't care if I don't become an Instagram influencer. I don't care if I don't, that idea is gone. I don't care about that anymore. What I do want is to at least have this small goal be accomplished. I want to be in a band. I want to be playing shows. That's my goal. And it was small, it was manageable, it was achievable, and through hard mahi and constant effort, I was able to achieve that goal. And if I hadn't let go of this idea of what my dream was supposed to be or how it was supposed to happen, if I hadn't have let go, I wouldn't be where I am today. I'm working in the industry, helping run events, being involved in festivals, what else do I do? I mean, this, like me coming on here and talking about these things, I never would have thought that I'd be doing something like this. I remember when I was a kid, and I remember the first reading that I ever got was from my mum, and she had these beautiful like fairy oracle deck of cards, and she basically asked a question that about who I was going to end up being, and it came up with the card teacher. And as a kid, I was like, I don't want to be a teacher teaching in schools. And I remember my mum said, well, you don't have to be that kind of teacher. It can mean any kind of teacher. And only now looking back, do I realize that this was a part of that, coming on here and teaching about things, life experiences that I've had, how to sort of navigate the intricacies of, really specifically, jealousy, competitiveness, wanting to achieve things but not knowing how, being insecure, hating yourself, not believing in yourself, and how to remedy those things realistically without shaming yourself into doing it. And I remember moving into the city and just not even expecting anything to happen, right? Like I was like, right, this is going to take so long to even get anywhere, and it's not even going to, people aren't probably going to like it. Like, I'm not that great, right? I didn't really have much belief in myself other than just faith that it was going to work out. But even then, I was not, my hopes weren't very high, right? But I knew that I just wanted to be happy. I just wanted to have that goal. I just wanted to experience that life. I wanted to do that thing. And for you, it could be anything. This could be having a gallery for your art, selling your art, getting money doing music. Anything. It doesn't have to be to do with art. I think that everything is inherently creative in some way. But my point is that through sort of this humbling experience of being at rock bottom and not believing in myself at all, hating myself, like just all of these really, not nice things, came a staircase, and it was the staircase in front of me, and every step of the way was constantly unfolding this story that I could never have conceptualized myself. I could never have been able to even predict anything that's happened to me in the last 4 years. But the one thing that stayed consistent was my commitment to happiness and to being fulfilled and to achieving things that not only were achievable but also that just set my soul on fire, that just made me feel excited and happy. And you know what? Trying to be an Instagram influencer and trying to do that sort of stuff, like, oh my God, that does not excite me. You know, like, obviously, like, I was young, and when you're young, you know, you want superficial things, and you think that that's like the most important thing in the world, right? In this day and age, for me at least, it's not. The most important thing in the world for me is experience, is real life experience. It's building something real, it's having a strong foundation for those things to sit on top of and reaping the benefits from it for me emotionally. And through doing that, by stroke of luck, I don't know what it was, but the pieces just continued and still continue to fall into place, and things just keep unfolding rather effortlessly. And sometimes I just don't even have to try or put effort in, and it just falls in my lap, and I'm like, okay, that's where we're at. And I think that that is a really beautiful thing, and that's like, you know, Taoism is exactly like that, you know, that concept of flow. And I've talked about that on this channel before, about, you know, stop struggling so much to try and make something really specific happen in your life. You know, following your dream is not about going against the tide, and really, you know, sometimes you want to work hard, right? You want to be that, you want to have that spirit and that fire that really pushes you forward and gives you momentum. But pushing against the tide and trying to flog a dead horse, it's so much more beneficial to let go of that control and let things unfold, and not have that voice in the back of your head that says, this isn't enough, this isn't what I want, because you don't even know what it's going to end up being. You know, I remember how it felt to be just starting out gigging in the city, and how it's like I had this idea of what I wanted in mind, and I knew it was going to take time to get there, but man, I was determined. I was so determined to play the best venues, to play alongside the best bands, you know. And it happened, and it happened relatively quickly. And I can attribute that to my work ethic, but I also attribute that to the fact that I wasn't trying to be something I wasn't. I wasn't trying to make something happen that wasn't mine to make happen. And I think that that's what I was trying to do in the past, you know, like, especially at that time. It was what, like 2018, you know, there was the huge influencer boom on Instagram, you know, back in that sort of golden era of you know, social media influencers. And I thought that because it was so easy for other people, that it would be easy for me too. But it was so damaging to my self-esteem. I was just constantly comparing myself to other people, constantly just like recycling things that other people had done, thinking that it was good. You know, it was the equivalent of like those YouTubers that will like basically like rip off other people's content and then do this super like clickbaity titles, you know, and then they make money from that sort of thing. I want you to feel comfortable doing these things authentically to you, that feel right for you, that feel like they just flow naturally, feels like it's meant to be almost. There is nuance to it, you know. Sometimes you're going to feel like, oh, this isn't meant for me, I'm not meant to be. I've been there. Oh my God, I used to live in this other place in town, and there was this hill, and I would go up on that hill, and I would sit there and I'd just draw and listen to music. And I remember one time so vividly, I went up there and I just cried, you know, and I wrote down in my journal, and I wrote down, this isn't meant for me, I'm not supposed to be doing this, like it's not going to work out. And it was before anything had even happened, right? It's like you have to give yourself a chance, you know. You're going to feel doubt. It's so normal to feel doubt, but I think, I don't know, you just know when it's right, because it's like that doubt is coinciding and rubbing against something that feels right. It feels authentic. It feels exciting. And it feels possible at some capacity. It feels possible. And some may look at my life and think, well, Hayley, your life is not that. It's not that great, you know. Look, I believe in myself, and honestly, that's all you need. You know, you don't need to be racking up millions of streams on streaming services. You don't need to be huge. The most important thing at the end of the day is like, is this a life that you're proud of? You know, I'm proud of my life. You know, I've got a great job. I'm in a band. I've got my solo stuff. You know, like to me, I've got it all. You know, I'm happy. It's stressful at times, and I'm constantly, you know, the bar is always constantly moving. But still, I'm following my dream in a sense of like, I don't know what's going to happen next. But I think that that's the most exciting thing about following your dream, is that you don't know what's going to happen next. You're not supposed to. It's not supposed to be clear to you what's going to happen. And that's both exciting and terrifying, because as it unfolds, and especially when you do start doing that and then something completely unexpected happens that's amazing, and you're just like, what the heck? I never knew that this was even possible for me, right? And what I would define as the right path is just being yourself and, you know, doing what feels good and what feels right to you, as long as it's not hurting or harming anyone or you. And I think that the world is a much brighter place when people are brighter from the inside, feeling that connection to something deeper, something more sacred, instead of just mundane. I mean, there's a lot to be said about that sort of stuff. Call me an optimist, but I just think that life is much better spent following your dream, and not in the sense of like, I'm going to be an actress for the rest of my life and that's going to be my job, but following your dream in the sense of, I'm going to follow acting and I'm going to follow my love for it and see where it takes me. Maybe end up as a director, maybe end up as a teacher. You just never know where it's going to land you. The most important thing to remember is that you're not a failure if you're not an actress for the rest of your life. You know, you're not a failure if you're not in Hollywood and making all of these amazing, huge movies. Like, it's awesome if that happens and if that's what you want, you know. But I think that following your dream is just beyond the superficial. It's beyond superficiality. It doesn't, I don't think that it equates to fulfillment, right? Because you're constantly chasing something. You're constantly out of reach of something. And I guarantee you that when you're holding it in your hand and you actually have it, and you are doing that, you are not going to feel any different. You know, maybe you've got slight euphoria when it first happens initially, but that's going to wear off. And then where are you going to be? You know? Whereas if you just let the tides take you and guide you and let your life unfold while following that dream of your enjoyment in acting, or that whole sphere, right? You never know where you're going to end up. The most important thing is that you're happy along the way and to whatever destination you end up getting to. It's really been fulfilling for me to sit down and talk about these things. It's very helpful for me and reaffirming for things that I struggle with and need help with sometimes too. Sometimes I feel like I'm better at talking to other people about this sort of stuff, and sometimes I will watch my own videos back when I need the advice myself. But I think that I've always just sort of been that person, you know. I've always been the advice giver, and I've always been giving really good advice too. And when I started taking my own advice, it changed my life. So I hope that it changes yours too. I hope that you find something useful and helpful out of these videos. I always read the comments, and it's very, very sweet hearing from you and what you have to say and to contribute to the conversation. So let me know your thoughts about this. Keep going, keep being your beautiful self, whatever that means to you. Always remember that I'm here if ever you need some advice, if ever you need to just come hang out. And I really hope that this video helped you, and I will see you in the next one.